In the last video, we learned how to take a graph and make it into an equation. In this video, we're going to go the other way around. We're going to take an equation and make it into a graph, or we're going to take an equation and learn how to draw it. So, there are essentially two steps in how to do this. First, we have to be able to look at the equation and figure out what the y-intercept is. That's easy enough. The y-intercept will be whatever this number sticking out here at the end by itself is. So in this case, we have a -1. We can say that b equals -1, or our y-intercept equals -1. So what do? We draw that onto, we draw a -1 onto the y-axis. So right here, as you can see, I drew it here, is our y-intercept, or our b. So, that was our first step. We had to draw that point. That's a good starting place. Now next, we have to look at the slope. Remember, our slope is the m value. It is the value that sits next to the x. It's the number next to the x here. It's 2/3 in our case. So I put m equals delta y over delta x, which equals 2/3. So, what I'm basically saying from this is that the change in y is 2 when the change in x is 3. So, what do we make of that? Well, if we look here, I'm going to start at our b, start at the point we graphed in the last step. And then, I'm going to take, what's the change in y? Well, it's +2. So that means I'm going to go up 2 notches. 1, 2, even though my notches aren't very even, but we're going to pretend they are. Now next, after I do that, I'm going to say, well, what's my change in x? Well, my change in x is a +3. So therefore, I'm going to go 3 in the positive x direction. 1, 2, 3. Staying at my same y level right here of +1 is where I ended up, which is 2 up from the original spot. But anyway, I ended up here after I looked at my change in y and change in x. So I graphed that point. I drew a dot there. And then my final step, step 3, was to draw a line, preferably a straight line, although admittedly that's kind of hard to do. You go through both of these dots that you just drew. So all I had to do was draw a line that went through both the dots that I just made, and then I draw a little arrow at the end of each of them, and voila, you have this is the graph, well, excluding little cloud jumpy thingies. This is the graph of this equation right here. I'm going to do a second example. So I want to make this equation into a graph. So what's our first step? Our first step is to find the y-intercept. So basically just look at the number out back here by itself. That is 3, so we can say our y-intercept, or our b, is 3. So we want to put that point there. So where is y3? 1, 2, 3, right there. Okay, so I graphed that blue point there. I drew that blue dot because of this 3. This 3 is that blue dot. And then what was our second step? Our second step was to look at the slope. The slope is this number right in front of the x, so m, which is our slope, is -2. Now, remember in the last example how we had a fraction, which was nice because we had y and we had an x. Well, anytime we don't have a fraction, we just make it a fraction, because -2 is the same thing as -2/1. Anything, you can just put a 1 underneath anything and it doesn't change the number. 2 divided by 1 is 2. 3 divided by 1 is 3. It doesn't matter what it is, it stays the same. Therefore, we can just stick a 1 under there and it doesn't change anything. However, it does make it easier for us to look at because we can see now that -2 is this change in y value, and 1 is our change in x value. So we have our x and our y and our x, excuse me. Now, let's do our jumping around step. So we start at our b value, right here at our blue dot at our b, And then what's our change in y? So our change in y is -2. So we want to go down 2, 1, 2, in the negative direction, which is down. Now, what's our change in x? Change in x is 1. It's +1. So we want to go +1. So we want to go 1 in the positive x direction. So we want to go 1 to the right, to this point right here. So I drew a red dot where we ended up. And then we just had to do our final step, which was drawing a line that went through both of those points, more or less. And then I drew a little arrow on the end of each side of the line so that it would actually be correctly a line, indicating that our line does keep going in this direction and does keep going in this direction. However, this is just our little representative portion. And that is how you draw a line from an equation.